And we're live. I'd like to welcome you to the show. Good morning.
Good morning, Donnie.
We're here with Baltimore County Councilman Izzy Patoka. Izzy, how you doing, Councilman?
I'm doing well, Donnie. Thank you so much for inviting me to your show. Was really looking forward to seeing you.
Oh, the pleasure's all mine. You know, we met years ago. I guess it's almost 20 years now, has it been?
Well, you know, it's been more than 20 because I was trying to think back. Did we meet professionally? Did we meet socially? And as I think back, you and I met on the basketball court in the late 90s. And I'm still a little bit sore at you, Donnie, for blocking my shot.
I got a block shot in?
Well, I think you did, but my memory's not so good. It could be maybe I blocked your shot or you blocked my shot, or maybe we dunked on each other. Who knows? But it was all good times back then.
Oh, you're good, buddy. You're very good. Izzy, I could barely touch the rim. But I do remember you had a steady jumper.
I do. I did, and I coach basketball now, and so I coach 15, 17-year-olds. So that's why when we were chit-chatting before the show, I mentioned I had 3 basketballs in my trunk. So I coach 15 to 17-year-olds, and they all know that they can first step me. Nowadays they can, but they can't beat me at the foul line. So I make them run laps if the coach beats them 7. If I beat them at the foul line.
What do you think of the NBA Finals?
Well, I'll tell you, I've been on the campaign trail, so I've been so focused on that, I haven't really been following the finals of the NBA. Although I will say that on the campaign trail, I do get a chance to play a little ball. I was door knocking last Saturday, and a young man, he was 15 years old, named Kyrie, was shooting by himself, and challenged him to a game of 1-on-1. And I don't know if you remember my bank shot, but it was going in. Hit 4 out of 5 straight banks.
I tell you what I do.
Kyrie.
When you mentioned Kyrie Irving came to mind as you were talking. Have you seen this guy's dribble? I mean, yeah. I saw a clip where he drags his foot. He's going through the hole, and he drags one of his feet to slow himself down. But if you're playing him, you'll never see it unless you're watching his feet, of course.
Yeah. Well, the athleticism is phenomenal. I think if our quarterback on the Ravens, his athleticism, Lamar Jackson, the way he can stop and start and then go into a speed that is unknown to the NFL. I'm so pleased that he's playing for the Ravens, and I hope he'll continue to play for the Ravens. But I just don't think we saw athleticism like that in those days.
Well, look, I saw a picture this morning, late last night. Michael Jordan standing next to Dr. J. Now, we live in a generation now, that's all they know is Jordan. But you and I remember before Jordan, there were other greats like Dr. J. Can you imagine that there will be a time when they won't remember Jordan like that?
I don't know. Michael Jordan seems to be the standard. I remember watching him as a freshman at University of North Carolina, and at that time thinking that he's something special. And it was who knows how you go to the next level, because the next level is always exponentially more difficult. But for Michael Jordan, there are some people like Michael Jordan that when they go to the next level, their game becomes stronger and stronger, and they excel at that next level, and they become standards of comparison with each new generation of athletes.
Let me shift gears a bit. One thing on this show, we have a wonderful sponsor, STEM City USA, and Dr. Tyrone Taborn is always pushing the STEM. As a matter of fact, he now has this show featured in the metaverse. So if you go to STEM City USA and you got the Oculus goggles on, it's it's an experience on a whole other level. How is Baltimore County coming along with respect to STEM, with STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, math?
Well, I think we're doing really well, and we're going to do better this year than we ever have. Currently, the county council is reviewing Baltimore County Public Schools, both operating budget and the capital budget. And we're going to, on the operating side, and especially with help from the Built to Learn Act, which our state legislators approved, and then on the operating side with the Blueprint for Maryland's Future, we have more resources to implement the initiatives like STEM, STEAM that will prepare our children for the economy of the future, and they'll be ready for either college or the trades, whichever path is right for each individual student and the families, and families, as families encourage, as parent of a college student myself, I try to encourage my son in the right direction. And so families make decisions. And right now, more so than ever, we have the resources to provide to the families so that they can make the right choices for their children. And then that's generational, because then their children's children have greater opportunity. And that's what we all strive for our children to have greater opportunity than we had.
Councilman, you have a unique set of experiences. I mean, you've worked extensively in Baltimore City, but now your work finds you in Baltimore County. Now, I can ask you this, and I'm not sure I could ask the other council people this because I'm not sure of their experience in Baltimore City. But we have crime. We have crime that's blowing up Baltimore City, Baltimore County. What do you see the future? What do you see in the future between these two jurisdictions? Is it one jurisdiction?
Well, let me just say this, and I'm gonna start by saying we're neighbors in a community, and our neighborhood is as strong as our community. So Baltimore City and Baltimore County, we're next door neighbors. So just like in a community, you want your next door neighbor to have a strong house and you want to help. However, for example, I know lots of neighbors, if the one neighbor is unable to mow the lawn, they'll take their lawnmower, mow the neighbor's lawn. And I think that would make for a healthy region and a healthy Maryland, where Baltimore City and Baltimore County are working together as neighbors. And let me back up to kind of your initial thoughts on this question. So I do have a unique perspective on things, because going back to the days when you and I met in the late 90s, I was actually working for Baltimore County at the time, because I started off, I don't know if you know this, Doni, I don't think we've talked about this, but my degrees are in planning. And so I have a bachelor's degree in planning and a master's degree in planning. And then right out of school, I went to work for Baltimore City Planning. And I worked in Baltimore City Planning until 1990, right out of school until 1996. And I went from entry-level planner and worked my way up the ranks to be chief of capital budgeting for the city. So I had a good perspective across agency lines about what we were doing in terms of public safety, education, and all the nuts and bolts of government. And then I got recruited to work in Baltimore County as chief of capital budgeting for Baltimore County. And that's the time when you and I started playing hoops together. And it's funny, because I thought I knew you before that time, but really I was at Baltimore County at the time, and I was there as chief of capital budgeting. 8 months into that job, I was promoted to deputy director of planning for Baltimore County. And as a planner, Delegate Sheila Ruth said, being a planner is a really cool profession, but a lot of people don't know what that is. And so I'll just take a moment to say the basic and kind of the basic premise of what we learn in planning school is what belongs where and when. Where should parks be? Where should traffic lights be? How do we make communities as strong as they can possibly be? So those are the things that I went to school for, and both in my undergraduate studies and also my graduate studies. And I was lucky enough to get a job both in Baltimore City and Baltimore County. Uh, when I was in Baltimore County, I got recruited to come back to the city and work in the mayor's office as the founding director of the mayor's office of neighborhoods. And that's where you and I began to interact professionally to try to strengthen your neighborhood and others across the city. And we had a really strong team. Delegate Tony Bridges was part of the team. Richard Burton was part of the team. So these are some of the what I call community warriors that help to, they live and breathe as you do, Donnie, and as many others, friends in the city and county, live and breathe to strengthen their community. And so we can't do it without folks that believe in their community, believe in their city, believe in their county. And so I was working in the mayor's office for 6 years, and then I went to the governor's office to grow or to scale out the mayor's office of neighborhoods to a statewide level. And then it was time for me to leave the governor's office, and I moved to be actually the first director of community development for LifeBridge Health to strengthen neighborhoods around the 5 campus locations of LifeBridge Health. And I thought, I do this. I've been community centered my entire life. I have worked to strengthen communities my entire life. So I'm going to take a shot at running for council. And I did. I was successful. And I think, I was well prepared for this. I enjoyed doing it. I get good feedback from my constituents, and I have a great team. And we fight every day to make every neighborhood in the 2nd District of Baltimore County strong. And getting back to your original question, we work closely with our city partners because, like I said, we're all in the same community, and we need our next door neighbors, and our next door neighbors need us to be strong.
Well, let me just put a plug in for a lady on your team. Her name is Jenna. And within one phone call, we were able to get this interview scheduled. And that may seem like a simple thing, but it doesn't always happen like that. Quite often, we have people representing us, and I'll get back to you, and hold on, and what's your email? Let me call you back. There's so many different scenarios, but working with Jenna was very simple.
Well, I'm pleased.
Her, she understood me. Boom, 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 bam. You put the kiss of life on it, the blessing on it, and voila, we're here. But it doesn't always happen like that. I tell you, some elected officials have some people. I don't know. I mean, because it's easy to point fingers. But anyway, I digress.
But let me comment on that, Donnie, because it's really part of the mantra of how we operate is myself and my team, and I have a great team. Justin Silberman's chief of staff. Jenna Mitchell is a legislative aide. Carlos Gonzalez is a special projects manager. And we also had Ashley Wallington, who was helping us with food security, managing 7 different food distribution centers across the county. And she did such a good job that County Executive Johnny Olszewski thought that he would hire her. And so we lost Ashley, but we gained Jenna. But you know what? Ashley's still a close friend, and we still interact, and we still work together on food security issues. So I think it's great for the county to have somebody as talented as Ashley working on food security. But I give big props to my entire team, because one of the things that we do is no phone call or no email gets stale more than 24 hours. It will stay fresh within that 24-hour window.
The late Kenny Harris, that was exactly how he ran his shop. within 24, and I think for email it was 48 hours. And so I just want to say thank you for. It's just like with basketball, you got to do the fundamentals right.
Correct.
Sometimes we want to go on to these mega projects when we haven't mastered the fundamentals, like answering the phone. Okay, I digress. I want to go back to planning. This is a comment, and then I'm gonna pose a question for Baltimore County. You said planning is things going where they're supposed to go.
Correct.
And so is it safe to assume that planning is common sense?
In a way, it is. It gets common sense. It gets more detailed. Like, for example, great planners like Olmsted and Vaux, who designed Central Park in New York. You know, it got a little bit more complex because they had to create an open space for a large city like New York with many millions of people. For L'Enfant, Pierre L'Enfant, a great planner, he had to design our capital city. So sometimes it's really complex, and sometimes, like you said, Donnie, it is straightforward. For
Now, I got
example,
to give you a little bit of insight on that, Izzy, Councilman Patoka.
you can call me Izzy.
When
we know each other a long time.
I digress. I apologize, Councilman. When we mentioned Central Park, I wrote a book. It's called I Am Black Wall Street. It's actually my second book. And in this book, we talk about Central Park. There was a place there in 1828 or so called Seneca Village. And Seneca Village was, what do they call it? Eminent domain. It was taken in order to complete Central Park. But it was one of the oldest independent Black communities in America. And then you shifted down. You said, what'd you say about Baltimore?
Well, I talked about Washington, D.C. and L'Enfant, who...
L'Enfant. So also, you're in Baltimore County. You know that's home or was home to Benjamin Banneker.
Yep. Oh, and Oella.
Right. So, you know, he memorized the plans.
Yep.
For the Capitol.
That's very true. And I'm glad you pointed that out. And Donnie, if I could tell you how kind of through a planner's lens, we look at very specific issues, and even right here in the 2nd District. So in my district, there are 4 communities: Villanova, Paul's Crossing, Williamsburg, and Willow Glen South. And they're in the middle of those communities, closer to Paul's Crossing and Villanova, was Paul's Farm, and it no longer became a farm. And so there was a plan for 65 units to be built in Paul's Farm, already a high density zoned area. And in addition, there was a lack of open space for the community. No pavilions, no barbecues, no place for community gatherings. And it's really a struggle in the 2nd District for having those types of spaces. So these 4 communities fought against the development of those 65 units, and instead fought for open space, so that those 4 communities, 4 acres of open space. And 9 out of 10 times, communities don't win. But we fought together, we fought in unison, and now Paul's Farm has been acquired by the county. It's going to be a county's park, and it's a big win for Villanova, Paul's Crossing, Williamsburg, and Willow Glen South. And so,
why don't they win?
Pardon?
Why doesn't the community typically win?
Because the playing field is pretty much slanted towards the developers. And so we've been trying to change that so that there's an even playing field, and that communities have a stronger voice. So Donnie, just to let you know, we advertise development proposals in a well-known publication, and I say that in jest, called the Jeffersonian, which has about 400 subscribers. when we have a world of internet. So we've been doing things that aren't really 21st century methods, especially as it relates to notification on development proposals. And that lends itself to a playing field that I don't believe is even.
So let me ask you, Councilman, when you worked here in the city of Baltimore, there was an effort by the mayor to computerize everything. And I just heard you allude to something similar. You didn't say so much that it wasn't computerized in Baltimore County, but I imagine both Baltimore County and Baltimore City are still adapting to this whole new world of the internet. Or are we? For instance, and I'm thinking about Baltimore City. There's so much that's not online, from procurement to planning to housing to zoning. Is it impossible to convert to a fully digital county, city, state government? Help me to understand what's the problem. Or
Well, I think it is possible, Donnie, but I also think that you still need to have some human characteristics to interacting with publics, with your elected officials and with agencies. So, for example, I will tell you, sometimes I go shopping in the grocery store in the heart of the district just to talk to constituents sometimes. And I take my time, and I think that there's a need for human interaction. Yes, Baltimore County, I can't speak for Baltimore City because I left there in 2006, and so a lot could have changed, and I don't know the inside activities of how it operates now. But for Baltimore County, we're getting better. We're taking baby steps to get better. We need to take larger steps. I know that through the development process, sometimes agencies, because we're not as automated as we should be, one agency may not be aware of another agency's addressing the same issue. But I do think that you have to have a good balance of automation, but also the human touch. For example, people call our office all the time, and they want to hear a human being on the other end. And they always like, you want to hear Jenna so you could talk to her about getting through it, rather than leaving a message. Now, during the COVID pandemic, and I would like to just address that for a moment. I was in office for 1 year, and then we had the COVID pandemic hit us, and no one thought it would last 2+ years. And so what we did is we were working remotely, but we checked our phones every hour on the hour to make sure that we were returning every call, because you may remember that people were trying to find out what grocery stores were open, how to get unemployment insurance, and the state wasn't answering the phones, I can tell you that, or answering emails, especially as it relates to unemployment insurance. And so we met every morning at 9 a.m., as we continue to do, to go through what calls came in, what emails came in, how do we get returned, how do we meet. We opened up Zoom and WebEx accounts so that we could meet virtually. And we continued on for the next 2 years with a very, very responsive protocols for our constituents, even though we weren't in the office. We were virtually in the office, but with the 9 o'clock meetings and checking our phone calls, and emails were easy because we all had that at home. But to check the calls that came into the office, we made sure that on the hour and almost 24/7, we were responding within that 24-hour time frame, because issues, when people call, and we, from time to time, we get a call that says, hey, you're doing a great job, and I just want to tell you that. But 90% of the calls are, my trash didn't get picked up, I have a pothole, something bad has happened. And we try to respond to that to make sure that we can, out of a bad action, we can respond with a positive reaction.
if you keep that up, you'll go as high as you want to go. I'm a big fan of customer service. I grew up working in my dad's funeral home. One of the first calls I had to answer, probably 5 or 6 years old. Good evening, Glover's Funeral Chapel. How may I help you? From a young kid, I was raised to understand customer service.
And that's a tough job because people aren't calling you because they had a great day. They're calling you because something traumatic happened in their family.
And I was raised to cater to those people. But similarly, it's the same when you're serving people. Like you said, I want to go to you alluded earlier to the food insecurities, because living here in Sandtown, it's hard to imagine that people in Baltimore County have food challenges. There are no poor people in Baltimore County, are there?
There's a lot of poor people in Baltimore County, and we saw it through the pandemic. I know that I myself and with my team, we had 7 food distribution centers that we weren't on the sidelines. We were active participants in. I know I lifted tens of thousands of 30-pound boxes of produce into people's trunks. And I could tell by what was in the trunk, these were people that at one time had jobs, but during the pandemic did not have jobs. And so there was the occurrence of, during the pandemic, if you think about it, we had an economic crisis, we had an employment crisis, we had a health crisis, we had a social crisis. People were really struggling because they were isolated. And, I saw, and especially young people that didn't have the normal things that you have in school. So we had all these things going on, and people, and there was an unknown. And I know that I introduced legislation, and if you, during that time, Doni, and it's hard to believe that landlords would do this, but I introduced legislation that was supported by my colleagues to limit the ability for landlords to raise rent during a pandemic. If you could imagine wanting to raise rent when people are out of work, when people's family members might be dying from COVID. And so we put a stop to that, and I led that effort. And going back to your original question about food deserts, we for the past, I would say, 10, 15 years, 20 years, our inner beltway neighborhoods have not been tended to as they should. And many of these, the food deserts that you're describing are in our inner beltway neighborhoods. And so, for example, the Liberty Road inner beltway, and that was not in the 2nd district. That will be in the 2nd district. And one of my goals in my 2nd term, I have 2 kind of primary goals that are geographically focused, and they both lend themselves to improving the quality of life to inner beltway neighborhoods. One is to revitalize the inner beltway commercial corridor of Liberty Road, and the other is to revitalize the commercial corridor of Reisterstown Road. And we were able to get, so for example, in at the Pikesville Armory 3 years ago, we didn't have 2 dimes to rub together to try to transform that into something spectacular. And now we've got $8.8 million. And I plan to do the same thing on the Liberty, in the Liberty Road corridor to kind of cobble together state, federal, and local money so that we can incentivize these inner beltway neighborhoods so that grocery chains are interested and people have confidence in our communities, and they're willing to invest. And I think we can do it. I think we're going to be successful in both the Liberty Road corridor and the Reisterstown Road corridor, and I'm looking forward to leading the effort.
Now Liberty Road, my understanding is there's a challenge doing anything on Liberty Road because it's now you correct me if I'm wrong, it's a U.S. highway.
It's a state highway.
A state highway.
Yeah.
So the county can't do anything on Liberty Road?
That's a great comment. So no, so it's funny because in Baltimore City, the city is responsible for state highways. So Liberty Heights, as it is Liberty Heights, is managed by the city of Baltimore. When it becomes, and the streets are plowed by the city of Baltimore, same is true with Reisterstown Road, and the same is true with every state highway that radiates from the city center to other places, to like Reisterstown Road was originally the road to Reisterstown. York Road was originally the road that led from Baltimore City Center to York. And so over the years, through funding structures and legislation at the state level, in Baltimore City, the city manages those roads. In Baltimore County, they become the state's responsibility. So you're right. Liberty Road, the highway itself, is a state road in Baltimore County. And that doesn't mean that we can't invest in everything on the side of that road and also work with our state partners, as we did with the Armory, and say, hey, if we work together, if we put up this amount of money and you put up this amount of money, and then Ben Cardin, like he did for the Armory, gets $2.4 million for the Armory, we can get Ben Cardin to get $2.4 million for the Liberty Road corridor and have investment on the commercial areas that abut these state highways. Because in the olden days, these were the only roads to get, they were very commercially viable because there wasn't an interstate system. And as the interstate system grew, some of the old commercial corridors became a little bit more fledgling, as you know, and there's ebbs and flows. So for example, every Beltway exit had a mall in the late 70s, Security Mall, Golden Ring Mall, and so on. And so that hurt some of the main streets. And so that's the way my lens of looking at development, Donnie, is really simple. And, you talked about common sense. And so planners using common sense. So when I look at development, I want to make sure that it is respectful development. A, that it's respectful to the community. B, that it's respectful to the environment. And C, and these aren't in exact order, in priority order, and C, that it's respectful to Main Street, that this new shiny object, this new development doesn't destroy our main streets, our Liberty Road corridors, our Reisterstown Road corridors.
Now that's a strong stance, Councilman, because prior to your tenure, and I'm just going by the scuttlebutt, but I've heard comments about one councilman out there that said he's never met a developer he didn't like. And when I look at David S. Brown, when I look at, all around Baltimore County, David S. Brown, I mean, that name is like E.F. Hutton. And then, he's every damn way. And he's also in Baltimore City. And what I'm getting to is, for you to have that moral compass, that's quite contrary to what seems to be the norm, which is bowing down to developers.
Well, certainly, I can tell you during the last comprehensive zoning map process, where, one of the things that in Baltimore County, the council members, their broadest authority is in land use, and land use means, how you zone the land can change the value of that land. So every 4 years, the county will go through a rezoning process, and there were four extremely high profile rezoning applications, petitions that I denied. And I can tell you that I took immense pressure in denying those proposals. But to me, they were not, I didn't find, they were based on the premise, all three of the applicants were in financial distress. And so in order to get out of financial distress, they would sell off or amputate a piece of their land. And I didn't think that was well planned out. I thought that was just to balance the books. And so I took immense pressure from the developers for denying those three. And then there was another one that I denied because the developer was bullying the community. And I just
I
pushed
don't think
back.
you
And I
like
can tell
bullies.
you that I took a lot of heat, but I slept well at night.
I don't think you like bullies. I played with you on the court. I don't think you're the type to be bullied.
Well, I don't like bullies, and I try to do my best to not be bullied. And I do have backbone to stand up to these kind of pressures. And I feel like if you stay principled, then you're doing the right thing. And at the end of the day, you can look at yourself in the mirror and say, I did the right thing. You can sleep at night, and you didn't get knocked over by these developers.
Okay, so
In fact, in 2 cases, Donnie, which I'm really pleased, instead of marginal, you be kind and say, instead of having marginal developments, we have community parks now. One on Woodley Avenue and also one in Paul's Farm Park. And also, in addition to that, I proactively downzone 220 acres to protect the environment and the burden on the roads along Old Court Road, because Old Court Road was busting at the seams. And now with so many aggressive drivers, it's, and this is Baltimore City and Baltimore County, I think over the course of the pandemic, our drivers have become extremely aggressive. We all see it. And on these overburdened roads, it becomes even more dangerous. It's a real public safety threat.
Okay, so you've inherited part of the 4th. That whole Liberty Road corridor, they've lost 4 supermarkets, 2 Giants, a Food Lines, and a Shoppers. A Super Walmart is out there that may be the new go-to spot for people who live along the Liberty Road corridor. Any thoughts on the food desert on Liberty Road?
Sure. So let me just clarify. So the new boundaries of the district goes to I have the Liberty Road corridor up until the Beltway. So everything outside of the Beltway, I-695, will remain in Council District 4. And I try to stay in my lane. I'm happy to work with Council Chair Jones, but it's his district. And so I'll work together with him, but I try to stay in my lane in terms of what I can do in my district. But just like I said for Baltimore City and Baltimore County, the 1st and the 2nd district and the 4th district are neighbors, and we need to work together as neighbors. And because Liberty Road is linear, we need to have Liberty Road strong all the, from where it enters the county and even where it's in the city as well. And as it goes from the 2nd to the 4th district, we want the entire commercial corridor to be strong. And I know, back in the day, there was a food fair at Woodmore Shopping Center. And that was a place where everybody shopped. And so I think we can incentivize. Look, hey, we incentivize for industries like Trade Point Atlantic to move on the east side. We incentivize for places like Towson Row to build in Towson. Certainly, we can provide public subsidy and incentives along the Liberty Road corridor, and especially for the area I'm most interested in, those inner Beltway neighborhoods. And I plan to work to create incentives, just like we did for the Pikesville Armory for those inner Beltway neighborhoods, so that grocery stores say, that's pretty attractive. I think I'm going to build a 50,000 square foot grocery store right in Woodmore Shopping Center or somewhere else that's viable along Liberty Road. Because let's face it, it's a high density area. There's lots of shoppers, lots of people, lots of families that want to go grocery shopping. And so I think we can A, create incentives, B, create public amenities. Like, for example, every prominent feeder street, having a landscape buffer, making it feel good, making it feel nice. It's almost like your home, Donnie. You want to, when you have, if your home feels nice, looks nice, people want to come over. And I think that's the same is true with if we can make Liberty Road more attractive and
Councilman,
provide public incentives, it creates a great feel for a shopping experience.
there's this notion that African Americans, of course, Liberty Road is home probably to the most upwardly mobile African Americans in the greater Baltimore area. But there was this notion way back when Ken Oliver was in office that African Americans, that black folks can't keep big box stores. I live here in Sandtown, and we hear the same thing, that big box stores won't come to Pennsylvania Avenue because of this reason, that reason. And I know it's a crock of crap. How do we change the mindsets? Or can they not be changed?
Well, we have this department called the Department of Economic and Workforce Development. And one of the things that I'm going to do in my second term is I'm going to encourage in a very strong way, and Director Howie begin to focus and create a neighborhood cabinet that brings all of the agencies and does a charrette around the Inner Beltway Liberty Road corridor. Because I can tell you, Donnie, the neighborhoods from the 695 all the way to the city line are strong middle class neighborhoods, strong homeowners. Really, I can tell you because I grew up in Loch Earn, and secondly, I've been going to a lot of community meetings, and I think middle class neighborhoods are shoppers. They want to go shopping. They want grocery stores. They don't want to go, or they shouldn't have to go 10 miles to the grocery store.
There's no Starbucks on Liberty Road.
Well, I don't gauge Starbucks as the epicenter of progress. I think
I'm just looking for a good cup of coffee besides Dunkin' Donuts. Dunkin' Donuts, I've been going there for years, the one above the Beltway. But Liberty Road, why isn't there a Starbucks?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that we're not providing, like I said, the feel. We have a lot of agencies that, Recreation and Parks, Department of Housing and Community Development, Department of Economic and Workforce Development, Department of Planning. We all aren't working together. And that's what I'm talking about. When I talk about a neighborhood cabinet, I'm saying bring all those agencies together, get the planning department to create a plan. And I will say that Senator Sidnor has kind of set the table for this with some state legislation that allows for an economic authority. And so now that the table's set, it's time for the county to respond. And, as a planner, as somebody who lives and breathes making neighborhoods stronger and been community centered, I'm ready to roll up my sleeves and do this, especially, like I said, Liberty Road corridor. I grew up there. It's especially important to me. I grew up right in Loch Earn, and so I know every street like the back of my hand. I've ridden my bicycle on every street, and it's really great to go back. And I'm really excited about the potential of Liberty Road. And I think that's what's been lacking is when have you heard a council member, Donnie, say, "I'm excited about the potential of the Inner Beltway neighborhoods of Liberty Road"?
I've never heard it.
Well, I am very excited, and that's something that is my number one priority, along with, I've got three number one priorities, and that is Liberty Road Inner Beltway, Reisterstown Road Inner Beltway, and appropriate open space so that our higher density communities have a place to gather and have a cookout and have a neighborhood party.
I have been to your Wegmans out there.
Well, that's pretty popular.
I love it. I love going. I love great food. It's just you can choose your own steak. Now, I will say before there was Wegmans, my go-to spot was CJ's. How is CJ's? Are they still
They're closed.
operable?
They're
They
closed.
closed.
And there was a proposal for a McDonald's there that has faced some community opposition. It's in the development process, and so once a project, county council members have a lot of influence on what the zoning will be, but the county charter says that we should stay out of the once it goes into the development process, we should let the agencies do what they do in terms of development review and not interfere with that proposal, because it can lend itself to tainting development review.
Now, Councilman, I gotta ask you this. Most of my family is out the Liberty Road corridor. Things are happening out there that us urbanites in the city would never imagine. I remember, for instance, you say you grew up in Lockhern. There was a time when you couldn't go through Rolling Road. Rolling Road stopped once you went north of Liberty Road. It stopped around Cedar Gardens Apartments. I'm going back 30, 40 years. But now there's a road that goes from Cedar Gardens through to, I guess, Old Court Road. But the one that really got me, that blew my mind when I saw it, was, correct me if I'm wrong, Owings Mills Boulevard running into Liberty Road.
Well, yeah, Owings Mills Boulevard, and that's not in the second district, but I do recall the construction of Owings Mills Boulevard. So there was the last leg of it, which opened maybe 3 or 4 years ago, which connected, I think it was from Painters. It was from
All the way
maybe
around
from
about
Lions Mill or Painters Mill all the way to Liberty Road. I can't remember the exact location, but that was the last segment. And but that's far away from the second district, and that's well into the fourth district and almost towards Carroll County. And I can tell you, I know it well. You know, my son, and this is a fact that I'd really like to brag about Liberty Road. You know, my son plays college baseball, and when he was playing club baseball, he played for the Liberty Road Red Wings. And the Liberty Road Red Wings was an outstanding club baseball team. They went all around the state and other states and played, and they were champions. And over half of the team are now college baseball players. A number play at UMES. My son plays for Concordia University in Montreal, and then 1 or 2 other play. And they still all, now I asked my son, are you still talking to Alex and Mackay? And he says, well, let me Snapchat them. And so I don't even know how they're communicating, but they're all communicating. They're talking about baseball, but it was really, I think, one of the untold stories about Liberty Road was that outstanding club baseball team, 15-17. And so with that, I'm going to give a shout out to Sylvester Graham, who was a coach, Dexter Nixon, who was a coach, and because they coached a lot of college baseball players, and they all came out of the Liberty Road area.
Well, you're not going to get me beat up, Councilman Izzy Patoka. You're not going to mention Derek Burnett. Please don't.
Oh, Derek Burnett. Oh, my God. You know what?
You're trying to get me mad.
Not only is Derek, that I failed to mention, Derek, he's my buddy from Woodlawn High. We went to Woodlawn together, and Derek and I, now Derek did block my shot a number of times. I can tell you that.
About 7 feet tall.
Yeah, Derek was a good ball player, and he's also a good man. And I still am in touch with him quite a bit.
He's a huge baseball advocate. When I think of Liberty Road baseball, that's the first name that comes to my mind.
Yes, and his son was a really good third baseman, as I recall. But I think the reason I didn't mention Derek is his son was a little older, and Derek was more administrative than coach at that time. But I, because it's been such a part of my family's life, I'm thankful to everybody who volunteers their time and coaches our young people. It gives quality time. That's why I coach 15, 17-year-old basketball. So, I keep a couple of basketballs in my car, and it's quality time. And the other thing that really, I still stay in touch, mostly with my point guards. Like, they'll say, Coach, they'll get a text from them, say, Coach, I got this job offer and I got this other job offer. What do you think? And it really touches me here, Donnie, because it means that they still value the quality time that we spent together when they were 15 or 17 years old. Now, some are grown men, some are just 18 or 19. But once you have that name Coach, you never lose that name. That becomes your first name. And
Okay.
so
Look,
it's
we
something that I
got
really
4
value.
minutes, and I got to cut you on this because I got to get this question in.
Sure.
So you and I, we're fans of sports. For instance, if we had to do a pickup game, we wouldn't get 5 guys who were 5 feet tall, not related to Muggsy Bogues, to go against 5 guys 6'5", and they all dunk. That's just a no-brainer. Like, I don't want any parts of that, right?
Sure.
We're clear about that, right? That's just probably not a good idea.
You could probably run one good play, but that's about it.
So you have a challenger now, and I'm just going off of the rumors on the scuttlebutt on the street. But they say you got over $500,000. You're a popular councilman. And Reginald F. Lewis's brother. And Reginald F. Lewis, of course, is a staple worldwide. Everybody knows him. Why should white guys have all the fun? Have you asked yourself what Mr. Fugit was thinking to challenge you?
Well, look, running for office.
Is this not Don Quixote running at a windmill with a toothbrush? You got 700,000. I mean, come on, man. You got signs on Liberty Road. I saw it right there, somewhere around Liberty and Essex, down there where the supermarket is. Izzy Patoka. No.
Well, I attribute my supporters to my track record. And I think that myself and my team, we have a very strong track record, and that translates into support in people that are willing to share a piece of their real estate to support you for a second term. Because I have a track record, and track record is good or bad. And, people, you can be attacked on your track record, or you can be supported on your track record. And I'm really proud to say that I am supported on my track record. And so I don't really want to comment on Mr. Fugit's intention. I don't know him well enough to understand, what his future plans are. I will just say this, that running for office is one of the hardest things that you'll ever do. And I commend anybody who participates in our democracy and runs for office, because it takes a great toll on your body, on your psyche, and also a tremendous toll on your family. And you have to have a supporting family. So I commend anybody who runs for office.
Well, I'm from North Avenue, and I was told, don't get in front of any moving trains.
Well, that's good advice. And I will just say that myself and my team, when we engage in a campaign, it's a pretty robust effort, and we'll continue on that through Election Day.
Has this guy seen you play basketball?
I don't think so. But it's not what it used. I'll just say this, Donnie. It's not what it used to be.
I'd like to see a one-on-one.
Well,
let's boil the election down to a basketball game. What do you think?
Well, I'd rather keep it, keep the robust campaign going, but I wouldn't be adverse to little hoops.
Good stuff. Councilman, how can people get in touch with you? Thank you for joining us.
So there's two ways. You can go to my website, which is voteizzy.com, or you can call me right on my cell at 410-424-8786. And it's a real cell. And, it's not recording or something. I always pick up my cell. I feel like if you can't be accessible, you shouldn't be running for office.
I wish you would put that on a billboard and spread it around the world. Thank you for answering your phone. I appreciate that. And thank you to Jenna for making this connection.
Will do. Thank you, Donnie. And it's really good to see you. You look great.
Bless the Lord. I won't complain. Everything is Baruch Hashem.
Thank you. That's good words to say.
Have a beautiful day, Councilman. Stay tuned for Mr. Honolulu, 10 o'clock with the morning show. Good morning, world.